So we are going to start learning nested if on T-SQL programming. What nested if is, it executes if conditions and true and false operation blocks, one inside the other. That's it. And yes, that's simple. But sometimes we just make it complicated because you look at it from a holistic approach. But we don't want to do that. That's why we're going to learn something which we call step-by-step implementation of nested if. So we will start with a template of nested if. What does it look like? This template is something you should be carrying. You should be carrying it all along with you until you feel very confident implementing nested if from your memory. So we start with if, right? And we have a condition here. And then we set something which we call true block. If this condition here that we'll be putting is true, then we go ahead and implement this block. We call it true block, right? But each true or false block is wrapped in a begin and end sort of module. So we'll have to write begin, sorry, and end here. And inside the begin and end will go our operation. But in this case, it's going to be a true operation, right? Because if this condition is true, then this code block will be implemented. But let's say if this condition is false, what do? We go for else code block, and it's the same here as well. So if this condition is true, we implement this. If this condition is false, if this condition is false, we implement this code block, or we call it a false code block or false operation. But let's call it a code block instead of calling it an operation. Sounds good and fancy, right? All right. Okay. This is the basic template for if-else statements in T-SQL programming. You can carry it along with you all your life until you have it in your memory, ingrained. All right, so let's implement it. Now, let's declare a variable we're going to play around with. Call it variable 1, and it's going to be an integer. Let's assign it immediately. Let's assign 15. Let's double check if we have succeeded in creating the variable. How do we check it? Print the variable 1. Let's print it. Yes, it prints back 15. That means we have succeeded in assigning the variable to this variable. So what's our condition? The first condition is going to be we want to assign a variable, and we want to assign a number to the variable, an integer to the variable, and we have done it. We have assigned 15 to this variable 1. What we want to do is we want to see if this number is divisible by 5. Go ahead and get our variable and see if it is completely divisible by 5. That means we're going to use something called modulo. That represents the remainder is going to be 0. So we ain't going to have any remaining if we are going to use a modulo. And if it is if it is a value that's completely divisible by 5, we're not going to have anything remaining. If that's true, if our variable is divisible by 5, what do? We go and print divisible by 5. If it is not, if our variable is not divisible by 5, we have got 15 here and we know it's true. We know this is going to be implemented. But let's say we have 14 here. Definitely 14 is not divisible by 5. That means this block, this condition is going to be false. What do? If it is false, we go into else and we go into the false code block. What's going to be the false code block? It's going to be print not divisible by 5. If we run this code, this is 14. If we run this code, it says it is 14 and not divisible by 5 because nowhere 14 is going to be completely divisible by 5. That's why we have this. But this is what we call a simple if-else statement in T-SQL programming. But we want to learn the nested if one. For nested if one, what we do is we create another code block, which is exactly same as what we have outside this code block. Begin and end and an operation dropped inside the begin and end, right? So if it is divisible by 5, if 15 is divisible by 5, we want to check if it is divisible by anything else, any other number or not, right? How do you do it? We add another if statement. If this time we want to see if it is divisible by 3. If it is divisible by 3 as well, so it's meeting two conditions. So it is divisible by 5, it is divisible by 3. So it is the 15 is divisible by 3 and also by 5. So it's meeting two conditions. So what should it say then? It should say that this number 15 is divisible by 5 and the 3. So divisible by 5 and 3. Now, if we print it, 15 divisible by 5 and 3. But let's say we have another number. We have 12. Let's say we have 12 here. We try to run it. It's 12 and not divisible by 5. It goes, if it fails in all of this condition fails, this condition fails, not divisible by 5. But because this condition fails, this code block also fails because it doesn't even start. That means this condition fails even before it gets the chance of evaluation. And it directly goes into the second statement, the second code block, which is the false code block, because the first one failed and then it directly skips everything inside the true code block and goes into the false code block. But in the false code block, we want to replicate something which is similar to this one. We're going to copy and paste, and we want to say if that variable, whatever we have here, if it is divisible by 3, we say divisible by 3 only. So now this one says this 12 is divisible by 3 only because it is divisible by 5. Therefore, it is not divisible by 5 and 3. Therefore, it should be only divisible by 3. That's what it prints. It is divisible by 3. But let's say we want to complicate it even further. We have a number that's 13 and it is divisible by neither 5 nor 3. That's why it just says 13 and it doesn't do any operation because it doesn't go inside and does anything. This condition fails and also this condition fails. But we don't want everything in this false block to fail. We want it to say something, right? So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to say if this is also false, then we should say something. This is also false, we should say not divisible by any numbers or inputs here. So it is not divisible by any number or input here. So it comes here. This also fails, then it goes into the second statement in the false code block. This is the false code block of the false code block. See, and now if we run it, we see it says 13 and it's not divisible by any other inputs. And if we have another number, let's say we have 9, which is divisible by 3, and if we run the code, it should say it's only divisible by 3 because it's not divisible by 5. That's something very interesting to use in T-SQL, and it's called nested if. We have learned the nested if, and you can copy this as a template and you can keep on using it whenever you need to use if statement or nested if statement. So if you feel that this was helpful, if you have any recommendations, any suggestions, you can definitely comment down below.